Good morning. All right. And early this morning, after all that's been going on, I wanted to make sure I did a video just on the social penetration theory. The social penetration theory is nicknamed the onion theory. And this is really, I'm teaching this in a way so you can create a conversation map and get knowledge from the way that we self-disclose in a communication and uh, event or in our relationships to kind of understand different aspects of who we are and who other people are and the what is the relationship dimension that self-disclosure can give us a window into. So as I make this, I am trying to convey a skill to you that you're going to need in the class. I'm going to need you to be able to make one of these, and you'll probably rewatch a team meeting for that from the class, and I will ask as part of the deliverables of that team meeting to watch it and track who talked and who gave opinions or did what it was they self-disclosed and fill in the little pie slices to see the difference in how we showed up in that communication event. So understanding that we have like different aspects, we're going to kind of try and understand the theory as a self-disclosure theory and understanding identity, our private selves and our public selves. But we also want to use it, think of it as a tool that I'm going to be asking you to use. So if this video doesn't leaves you with more questions than answers, then keep track of those along the way. And the next time we come into class for our synchronized lecture, I will open it up and I'll be curious what those questions are and if I can clarify things. Who knows how I am doing the best I can to send the message, but we never know how it's being received. So let's make sure we enter into a dialogue about it. All right. Oh, my coffee is warm. I'm going to have to take a few more sips of that while it's still nice and warm. Okay. So here is social penetration theory. It is a model and has a circle to it and it has three layers to it. And the nickname for this theory is the onion theory. And when we talk about the two aspects of this model that we need to kind of understand, it is that the model contains breadth and depth. And by breadth, I mean width. I mean uh, the wideness, right? The breadth of something. It sounds like it could also mean like breath, that kind of breath. But in this word, we're talking about breadth, the width. And the breadth is the circumference around the circle. I When we talk about breath, we're talking about aspects of self, aspects of what make you. And the truth is, you are infinite. Uh, the model will try and create a finite aspects of you and self and create categories of who you are and labels and however you divide up aspects of self. But when we talk about breadth in aspects of personality, you are infinite. And there is actually no way to completely represent you in this little tiny onion structure. You are always in an ever evolving revealing of self to yourself, to you, and to others. But for the aspect of the way the model is used, you have breadth in that what you are willing to disclose to others. And this is specifically, we want to really focus on what we are willing to reveal. What are we saying? That's why in class, I presented Johari window because I think we really need to use that one to acknowledge the unintentional things we are revealing that we might be blind to, or the unknown of of ourselves. Social penetration theory is a little bit more tangible, and it wants to look at what is actually self-disclosed. Okay. The other aspect of this model is depth, and depth is the the plunging in of the different layers that we have here. And we are going to talk about three different layers, uh, one, two, and three. And these three different layers are levels of self disclosure that are connected to risk or vulnerability. What we consider less risky to self disclose, to things as we get more depth, to things that are maybe the most vulnerable things to, and the riskiest thing. And those risks and vulnerability are things that remember, because this is all aspects of self that sometimes are even hard for us to step into and acknowledge. So um, we have to be in really psychologically safe places, or willing to be in the discomfort of, or in the place, or bring up places of lowercase t or capital T trauma, live down deep in this part of the onion. Okay. So that's kind of the things we need to understand about the model. You have an onion, and the other person has an onion. Okay. So when you're in a communication event, you have an onion and they have an onion. And you have a different onion in a different relationship and context. Right. So what you are willing to disclose to a friend is different than what you might be willing to disclose to a family member, which you might be willing to disclose at work in a professional, respectful setting. These kind of aspects of self disclosure, you have a whole bushel of onions, and you pull out the onion that is appropriate to that relationship and to the context of that. And when we talk about those aspects of context, remember when we talked about identity, and especially the performance identity, we want to think about social norms, and uh, that we are kind of in a complicated understanding of people, how people might be perceiving us, and applying labels and stereotypes to us, sometimes without our control. And sometimes we try to spend a lot of time, much more time, in our interactions of self disclosure, because we are trying to manage uh, all of those aspects of identity that we don't have control over. So these are things often to consider that are impacting our self disclosure. Uh, so when we talk about self disclosure are the things I am willing to tell you. And there are risks and there are benefits to self disclosure. And I kind of already touched a little bit on the risks, and we'll keep getting into that as I talk about this. But when we talk about the benefits of self disclosure, we can really dive into this idea of being seen, of being known, that someone is willing to listen and acknowledge who we are, at no matter what depth we are at, even in the deepest places of vulnerability. If someone is willing to hold space and support us, that is a very specific type of listening skill. It's a very uncomfortable, and it takes a lot of work to learn how to live in a space where someone is willing to move into depth, and us not move into, not using our discomfort in order to mute the conversation or mute the self disclosure, or try and use uh, kind of reciprocity that s- takes the mic and then tries to and it doesn't mean you're a narcissist, but we sometimes use this narcissistic listening reciprocity when we're really uncomfortable with the conversation, when it is in deepest parts of people revealing self. And that can be not just trauma or really high emotion, it can also be things like of someone's joy, someone's feeling of happiness, or a reflective moment of feeling at peace. We want to look at the full spectrum of it. It just doesn't have to be something that is has kind of negative connotation to it. Positive things also really impact whether we're willing to self-disclose or how we listen. And I'm going to get more into that as we move on. Okay. So we want to, the last thing about the benefits, one more thing about benefits is what we know is that when we can use our language, which is very limited in its ability to capture the complexity of emotion. But when we use our language to try and express something, uh, there is an unburdening, there is a release, and you can do this all by yourself. You do not have to necessarily be in a place where you have to have someone there. You can self-disclose to yourself, and we sometimes call that journaling. Uh, Private video blogging can also do that, or sound blogging. The way that we sometimes there's a tool where you can turn on an audio recording and do that really deep self-disclosure, not for anyone else, and then listen back to that and be your own support, and then go into the person that wants to talk to that piece of self-disclosure. And you can do that conversation yourself. We have these incredible technology devices where we can show up for each other. And then there's also that journaling piece. And journaling we know, is incredibly useful to be able to move through a thought process and get to a place of a pointed articulation of a thought. So, something to think about when you're thinking about how you are disclosing, not necessarily to someone else, but also to yourself. You deserve to self-disclose to yourself as well. And sometimes that can be really difficult. All right. So let's talk about these three layers. The first layer here would be the lowest risk of something to share. So we would call that something more factual, uh, something really called small talk. Small talk lives here, and sometimes that can be its own uncomfortableness because what someone else finds low risk and just talking about that can feel higher risk for someone else, like your name. Hello, my name is, and saying your name and says, what's your name? Where are you from? Uh, what's your major? These would be all different things that might live in this breath, this outer first layer of breath. And the reason why that can be risky is sometimes someone's name can be a risk to disclose, and that's really can be measured in different ways based on in-group and out-group to a culture, or different past experiences of us trying to self-disclose our name, or how we might feel attacked based on stereotypes and what our name reveals about ourselves. So that is why small talk, one of the reasons why small talk can feel really uncomfortable There's other reasons as well. But we have to always recognize that what's low risk for us may not be low risk for another person. Okay. Uh, this is often why how's the weather? How about that game last night? Right? Like these different things. Did you watch the game? Or actually, when I did in one of my icebreakers, when I'm taking attendance on the very first day of class, is to ask, what have you been watching lately? What would you be willing to binge watch? Or again, or have been watching? These kind of type of questions. I'm trying to find a fact. Like, what's a fact? But it does reveal something of identity. So we see that we are already creating depth in revealing something about self, right? Um, the second layer here is riskier. The second layer, oh boy, this one is a little bit riskier because this is your opinion. This is your attitude about something. And you can tell this is a little riskier. This is one of the reasons why sometimes it is riskier to talk about politics because politics live in a lot of belief structures and opinion structures. And it reveals something about the way politics are kind of constructed that if I give myself a political label, I am now adding myself to a group and maybe there are aspects of that group I agree with, and maybe there's aspects of that a group I don't agree with. But revealing that slaps a label on me and the nuance of it. So when someone gives their opinion, you can often hear that they're really self-disclosing what they are not more than what they are. And because this is risky, we will be looking for that reciprocity, right? Okay, we got some of this outer layer revealed. Let me start filling that in here. Let's say we got a little bit of small talk in, and I'm feeling like I have revealed some different aspects of myself. And now, and I've gotten reciprocity. Hi, my name is this, my name is this. What's your major? This is your major. What, where did you grow up? This is where I grew up, right? So we're getting reciprocity and we're getting some similar structures and our onions are matching. And I'm like, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Who's going to take the first risk into the second layer and reveal that next component of self? And if I decide to jump in with an opinion, maybe I'm going to reveal my opinion about my where I grew up. Oh boy, I grew up here, and boy, this is what I think about where I grew up. I think it's the best place on earth, and there's no place ever that is like this, or I couldn't wait to get out of there, and I never want to return again. So that opinion is now a risk. What will be the reciprocity? So as soon as we dive into something riskier, we get a little more, our eyes get a little wider, our hearing gets a little more sharper. We lean in and we are listening to the very next comment where our sympathetic systems are on alert. What will be the reciprocity? What will the other person fill in on their layer? And usually you will get reciprocity of an opinion, but do I agree with that opinion? Will they, uh, oh, I've been there and I couldn't wait to leave too. Or, wow, you like living there? That surprises me. I didn't even like visiting there. Like, boom, shots fired. Right? We're listening. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you, oh, I've never been there. That's cool. What's that like? I've always wanted to visit there. What is happening in the reply will decide something about this relationship. Can we trust? Or am I going to back off and move back into layer one? That's it. I'm not gonna reveal anything again to this person. I don't feel safe. I'm gonna stay in that outer layer. We will depenetrate, right? This is penetration, and then we'll depenetrate, and we might actually start losing breath and be unwilling to share other aspects. So we are very carefully measuring this first level of risk. And one way to think about it, this is why first dates are like, oh, this conversation on the first date can feel so wonky. Or when we're first deciding if we want to go on a date and we're going back and forth on a dating app, or in or texting back and forth. They text me, I text them, and we're getting that reciprocity. We're getting self-disclosure. And oh, wow, I'm feeling good about this back and forth and back and forth. I want to meet. I'm going to take some risk. I'm going to meet. And then what happens next? After that, am I finally feeling safe enough? And this is for those of you who have done online dating before, or what I've heard from some young people in my family and from being a teacher, is that when you're just in this texting back and forth, digital communication style of self-disclosure, there there's kind of this illusion of being safe. But if you're trying to text back with someone who doesn't do reciprocity and texting, doesn't have that skill, or isn't replied back, it does affect the feeling of the other person, and they might not feel safe enough to continue with the relationship. And I'm not saying you should have to change how you digitally communicate, but you should be transparent about your style of communication and why this one is difficult and this one, and I feel better when we could find a different way to communicate to get to know each other. That's just an aside to how risky this very first opinion self-disclosure. But let me tell you, if you get reciprocity back that matches what you need, that sigh of feeling safe, and now we're off to the races of self-disclosure. I want to tell you about this, and I want to tell you about this. And oh my gosh, I can't believe you agree with me on that. I can't believe you agree with me on that. Oh my God, did you just mention this? Did you just do a reference to my favorite movie? And boom, right? We get a lot of uh, we get a flood of hormones from endorphins and other chemicals that make us feel like we can really trust and be feel safe in our self-disclosure. So until we don't, because we remember, from if you haven't taken my conflict class, or you're in my conflict class, or you've taken my or you haven't taken it yet, that conflict is inevitable and eventually we will hit a wall, but it's how we handle that wall when we hit it. So this is a really important conversation thing that we want to kind of understand about that reciprocity element to it. The very third, the deepest part of our onion, the very third layer, is emotion, feelings. And I'm not talking just about, let's see, let's get color here. I'm not just talking about the emotions that are the ones like, oh man, I get that, that makes me mad, or oh, I feel so frustrated with that. Or God, I love chocolate, or I love this, right? Like these little kind of ways that we use emotive words in aren't always the highest layer of risk. There's nuance to it. But when we get to the deepest part of the onion of self-disclosure, we're really revealing that we're revealing the feeling itself. We are actually experiencing the feeling in front of someone else. We are willing to be sad and feel grief in the presence of other. We are willing to be just frustrated and be overcome with and overwhelmed, and how much pain that can feel like in the presence of the other. Not just saying, "Oh wow, this makes me feel overwhelmed," but but really sinking in to the emotion of that. And this also includes joy. And I want to spend a minute talking about the importance of joy and being able to express joy, because there's joy is just as complicated as anger and as fear, because in our when we experience joy, if the other person doesn't have the reciprocity of the other person when we experience joy, do they move into this comparison? Oh, yeah, I'm happy for you that that happened for you. But you can see that the comparison of you, whatever's causing your joy is not that person is experiencing. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling around a bit with it. Because, or did they experience pain in the presence of your joy? Because I didn't get what you got. You got a scholarship, I didn't get a scholarship. And because of that, in our culture, we do a lot of things to dampen our joy, to take care of others. Some people do this a lot more. Some people don't, or not at all, right? It just depends. But especially people who are over accommodators, or people who are have been, because of past experiences, uh, they have been told that their joy is giving pain to others, and the other didn't, that feels pushed away because of what you got. You might not even share your joy. You might not even accept it as a good thing. Ooh, I got that scholarship. I wonder who I could tell. Who would be happy for me, you know, or who would be happy with me? Who would be willing to jump up and down and cheer because of my accomplishment? Now, feminine speech cultures, which I'm not going to get too much into feminine and masculine speech cultures in this video, but feminine speech cultures have such a strong cultural norm that everybody has to be the same, that this is where we'll really see, oh, yeah, I got that scholarship, but wah, wah, wah. Now I have this problem. Now I have this problem. Now I have this problem. So I think like it's easy to just talk about this deeper layer as being those places of trauma, but some of those places of trauma are because of our inability to show up in our truest, happiest moments as well. Especially and in masculine speech cultures, because things are competitive, um, the reciprocity of that is to feel like there was a win-lose, like I won and I got this scholarship. Look at you, you did not, right? Like this win-lose kind of hierarchy of that kind of shows up sometimes. Actually, I think the movie The Grinch is a lot about the feeling. The Grinch is in the presence of pain at watching the village in a place of joy. And you might think about moments where you have felt left out of an experience, and not feeling included. And what is that little moment of pain? And can we acknowledge that and kind of be more accepting that it's sometimes hard to sit in that place as well? What does it mean to be in a psychologically safe place? Is we have to understand a lot of aspects of our personality and self, and how are we disclosing that to others? Okay, that's me just talking about the theory. Now, how to make a conversation map. The conversation map, or when we look at this, I want you to be able to look at this and tell me something about this relationship. So, if I showed this map right here, and I want to make sure I label it person A and person B. So if I label person A and person B, and we look at this one, I would say that this relationship between these two people, person A and person B, has a lot of depth and breadth. There's a lot of depth and breadth. And for a relationship to have this much aspect of breadth and depth means that it is a long-term relationship. These people have known each other for years and years. And they have revealed lots of aspects of self to each other. Now, I never fill in the whole onion. That's just my own preference, to not fill in the whole oven. Okay, more coffee for me. Yeah, this relation, let's continue the metaphor. This one has been on a long cook for a long period of time. Okay, so this one here, I never fill in one slice of the oven. I did it again of the um, onion. One aspect of the onion. That's so funny. Okay, I'm the onion because of this slice here for me represents kind of like the way Johari window does the unknown, that there is all aspects of self that we do not know. And even if we've known someone for all of our life, from the day we were born, or we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary, or whatever it is that has built so much breadth and depth to our relationship, I leave this one open because I want to always acknowledge there's more to know. And we cannot always fully know each other. And a relationship that is in a place of a growth mindset is always interested in knowing more about each other. So that's why I leave that open. What other relationships would you put to this? A parent and a child? A romantic relationship? A BB, best friends forever, BFFs? I mean, what would you put here? Siblings? Okay. Something to think about. And if this is your onion and this is the other person's onion, do you have this? Do you have breadth and depth with someone in your life? Um, and this is sometimes why we have different feelings if that about self because of this reflection piece. I have to say, I have very, very good friends that I don't talk to every day. There are people that I've known for 40 plus years, and friends that I've known since since I was a child, and I don't talk to them every day. But when I meet with them and we meet at a coffee shop or we're traveling together and we sit down, it's like I know this person knows me. And once I fill in some of the details of the gap, it's like nothing has changed and we're back to this onion. So something to think about. Like it doesn't mean that you're talking to that person all the time. I think Brené Brown talks about someone like this in your life as being, it's good if you have, it's hard to find that. That's a really unique thing. And uh, having just one person is all you need. All right, let's look at this one. This kind of looks like the one when I was filling in, where we have some small talk and then we have some depth on one topic of conversation. So each pie slice here, let's consider that as a topic of conversation. Remember how I mentioned this was like the small talk? Like I told you my name. We talked about school. We talked about where I grew up. We could talk about our entertainment, movies. We could talk about music. We could talk about food. Uh, we could talk about, right, whatever that is. Each one of these pie slices you want to think about as an aspect of personality and what you're willing to self-disclose about you. Interests, hobbies, sports, uh, things like gaming. Okay, but in this relationship between person and A, it looks like they had some small talk of reciprocity, and then they hit a topic and boom, they went right to the core. But there's not much else. Not much else of the onion is revealed, but the reciprocity is there. So this one could be a stranger that you're sitting next to on a train or on a plane, or waiting in a long line at Disneyland. And maybe you know just a couple things about them, but then all of a sudden a topic comes up and something happens. And you're willing to self disclose about that one topic all the way down. And there is a relief in this type of self disclosure. Because if this was a conversation between strangers and we hit a topic where I could really express my opinion and I could get all the way to the core of that, and I know I'm never going to see that person again, and that person does not know anyone in my life, we sometimes feel safer self disclosing all the way to the core when we have reciprocity that is matching with a complete stranger because of the social net. We don't want to affect our social network, but we have things to say about that topic. And that can make us feel a lot safer to go all the way to the core. I wonder what else this relationship could be. But there is some aspect of anonymous to it. Maybe you're thinking of some ideas. I'm pausing just so you can get your own thoughts lined up. Maybe this is like a support group, a therapy support group of peers where everybody is asked to disclose, but we all are going to keep our lives private and anonymous. But the topic we're there to talk about, whether it's addiction or grief or whatever it is that we are there to talk about, that is the topic we are there to get to the core of. And because everyone in the group has agreed to these norms, we feel safer getting to the core. All right. I have another map. What about this one? Look at this. So we have person A who has self-disclosed many more aspects of their self than person B. This person has some reciprocity given on opinion, but person B is not self-disclosing, and person A is self-disclosing quite a bit. So I want to ask the question of what is this relationship? I would not really call it a parent-child because we don't really hit the core of emotion. And often when parents, even though parents are just, we could make a separate map. Oh, I'd be curious if you could do one for a parent-child where the parent is talking much more than the child, is doing much more of the revealing of talk, disclosing of, with through talking than the child. But we still honor that the child has some reveal of emotion. Maybe this is a teenage and a parent, because teenagers are really good at exiting and stonewalling as an emotional safety technique in the aspect of a parent. Um, However, I don't think even this can capture that. So person B has done a little, person A has done quite a bit more and has gotten on several different topics right down to the core. So I want you to think about what kind of relationship this can be. And of course, the one that comes to mind, we want to say that person B, well, I'm not going to get there yet. First thing I want to say is person B is the listener, and this person is the speaker. Listening, speaking. So, who are the listeners in your who are the listeners in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood. In our society, what are the roles that people play where they are the listeners? Or so we could talk about this being maybe, and you probably hopefully got there. This is a therapist or a counselor, and this is someone coming to use self-disclosure as a way to unburden themselves. And this person has been trained in a very specific listening technique to allow this person to keep opening up. And I think this is really the key, that they were willing to take a risk as well. And maybe they were the first to give the risk to help this person start to unravel more. But they didn't need to keep going with that once they got this person into the space. They needed to feel safe with the disclosure. So this could be a judge and someone on, or an attorney and someone on the stand, or a lawyer and a client, maybe, maybe not. I think lawyers can talk a little more than this, um, but they are there to listen. That is the job, to get the story from the other. The judge doesn't do as much talking. They give their opinion at the end, but they are there to say what the norms are, say the facts, and then they are the listener. And they move into the listener role and hear the story of what's happening in the courtroom. Another is what about in the workplace? If this was happening in the workplace, if you've been in a team meeting where you had this type of speaker around the table and this type of speaker around the table, uh, do we have something that is out of balance? Or who holds the power? If we have someone who has the mic all the time and is clearly the speaker in the room, and I'm not talking about extrovert but an introvert, but someone is much more in a place of revealing and doing self-disclosure, and this person is more muted. This person probably has a label, or there's some type of hierarchy of more power than person B, right? They're in some type of role where they have the mic, and that is the structure of the work environment. But do they have more power? Who has more power, the listener or the speaker? Something else to think about. I don't know. I think it depends. It depends on context and relationship dimensions and all sorts of, there's other layers in there. Okay. So now you've gotten social penetration theory. I'm actually glad I made it as a video, even though I can't wait to talk about it with you in more depth. Uh, I want to remind you, you will have to do this for one of your team meetings. You'll have to listen back and make a set of onions for everyone and fill it in on your own. Uh, and you'll have to time your speaking time compared to others. And we're going to start to really look for ways that if we are really trying to build effective teams, how are we making room for balance of ideas? And in the other class we teach in our program, Creativity and Innovation, this skill is invaluable for really getting to true creativity, to really dive into stakeholder engagement, to dive into what complex problems, wicked problems that have multiple causes and solutions are almost limitless. How do you get into that sensory place? You can only do that through an through balance and understanding the different aspects of self-disclosure and identity. Okay, this is a dialogue. I definitely talked a lot, but I can't wait to hear what you have coming back with this. I look forward to your response. Goodbye, everyone, and have a good week.